doing today? It is Wednesday,
It is.
May 26th. We're in OTAs. We're in it. We're doing it. Football's back. Football's
Oh,
back.
yeah, and
Yeah,
then
we're coming. We got the energy
yeah,
today.
yeah,
We're feeling ourselves a little
yeah, a
bit,
little
Nick.
bit.
We are feeling ourselves. So, um, Nick, I'm excited for the show today. You?
Oh, I'm pumped. I'm pumped.
I think.
I'm
Go ahead.
uh,
What do you? What
I'm
do you?
excited. I think I'm gonna keep my lights here for those of you who watch on video. I think I'm gonna keep them green until we find out what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. I think that's gonna be my
For
new.
sure.
I think the day that I turn them to like a blue or something like that is the day that we can all be very excited. But for right now,
Yeah, we need to get a
that's what
count.
we're gonna do.
We need to get it like a little ticker for each day that it's green
Like
and how many. Let's start an over under for
days
how many
without.
days your lights are gonna stay green.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Dude, yeah, but no, man, I'm excited. OTAs are kicked off and everything like that, and that's when I think the news stories start to get a little more wild. So it's kind of cool, like the format, the way that we do this show.
Yeah,
It's like the more that the teams I feel like are in their facilities, then the more fun we get to have because we're not having to
for
discuss stories about like this guy was on a jet ski with his fiance, like all that bullshit, like in the like stories that they have to run all off season.
I
It's
mean,
like now we're getting back to
not that those aren't interesting,
no, no,
you know.
not that they're not not that I don't want to see what player has the cutest dog or anything like that,
Or
but
like Tom Brady actually walked down to his mailbox and picked up his mail,
yeah,
that
exactly.
type of stuff, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly,
Like
exactly. Exactly.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I know everyone gets excited when Tommy Brady goes down to his mailbox and picks up his own mail. Everyone gets excited.
Oh
You
man,
know,
how
you
could you
got
not?
Tom Brady. Could you imagine him walking down just singing, "We just got our letters. We just got our letters." Just some Blues Clues type of stuff. I could see him doing that.
He's a
They should
weirdo,
bring
so I
Blues
wouldn't be
Clues
shocked.
back. They, well, they should bring Blues Clues back, but have Tom Brady be the star
Oh yeah.
and see
Yep.
what the media says about it. They'd probably be like, "Yeah, no, it's good that Tom's expanding his horizons and doing some more things,
Meanwhile,
in the world." And meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers is trying to do some things outside of football and just getting fucking crucified for it.
yep,
So, but speaking
absolutely.
of the Bucks,
Oh yeah.
Antonio Bryant or Antonio Brown
Hmm.
passes his physical and now he's officially re-signed. So I think the boys down in Tampa got the band back together,
Yeah, they sure did.
and I'll be honest, that's going to be a big time threat, definitely top three team in the NFL,
Oh, for sure.
and they're looking to make it happen again. You get that team another year closer. Our guy Bruce Arians down there, right?
Oh yeah, man.
And he's just
Yep.
the way he coaches, I feel like is so on health, which allows him to get the most out of his players.
Yeah, I
No
mean they seemingly
nonsense
love
type of
him.
guy, but also like the guy type of guy to have fun and really enjoy the shit out of a season.
Yeah.
And when you see your coach saying like, "Oh hell no, you ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
You're staying right here." Like that's got to make you feel good as a player that you're wanted, by your organization and the coaching staff and things like that. So
Hell yeah.
it's a cool thing to see like how the Bucks was able to go ahead and re-sign everyone. After just
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Well, and you get, Antonio Brown, he was not really available for them all last season, like he was. So, him having a full season with them, obviously him and Brady are familiar, but dude, I mean, the way that I see it is like, I mean, that is definitely a serious weapon and someone that I think Tom Brady wants to have out there as much as he can.
for,
So, yeah,
for
I agree. I did that. I do think I read an article earlier in the offseason that said something like they were able the Buccaneers are going to be able to bring back. I think Antonio Brown was the last piece of this. I think it's 20 or 21 starters. So very similar. I think the Packers brought back like 19 starters.
yeah.
So it's fascinating. The Chiefs are going to be in the same boat, and the Bills are going to be in the same boat. So my thing is like, I mean, that's it's going to be tough for the rest of the league because those are your final four last year, and they brought
Sure.
everyone back. all the
Yep.
coaching staff for the most part, all the players for the most part. So it's an uphill battle if you're not one of those four teams because they just
Yeah.
keep getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit it on the head. Those top four teams returning all those players, it's gonna be tough to beat those teams and knock those teams off the mountaintop that seem like they're flying high right now. Um, it'll it'll be interesting. And the thing with those teams is all have very solid quarterbacks.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
that's the consistent thing throughout. I mean, they all have great stars on the teams as well that help out. But
Right,
having a star quarterback that can really sling the ball, handle the offense, all that stuff really helps.
right.
Which we do, we shift over and we talk about an organization that, maybe did not have the best quarterback reputation. I didn't know if you saw this over on Barstool, Nick,
Uh,
but they did have an article, with Chris Sims just essentially. I mean, these aren't my words; these are someone else's.
of
But
course.
just ripping into Justin Fields, saying he's the 39th best quarterback in the NFL, and shits on him for about 16 minutes and 2 seconds. And yeah, so that's really interesting
Yes,
because it's like for one, like really like no reason to go shit on Justin Fields.
for
Like
sure.
I mean, in my opinion, yeah, and that's coming from a Packers fan too.
Right,
Like the kid didn't do nothing to warrant like he didn't come out and say like I'm the best quarterback in the NFL
right.
day one. If he would have done that, I would have been like, yeah, rip his ass apart. But he didn't do that. From this whole experience, from my perspective, the kid's been humble, excited for himself.
Hmm.
So that was a little disappointing to see. But to be honest, the 39th best quarterback in the NFL and you're a second stringer, that's not
I
a
know,
terrible thing.
I know.
And especially like right so like it's like kind of goofy. That's like saying like oh Blake Bortles, that dude's the fucking 35th quarterback in the NFL. That dude, he's not even starting. Like what are you
I
talking
know.
about? Because like by that logic, it's like Justin Fields after like probably week 3 or 4, if not sooner when he gets into the game, what do oh, well now he's the 29th best quarterback. Like
Is it?
it's just like a it's just like a lazy take if you had to ask me because like yeah he's a second string quarterback so he probably wouldn't be a top 32 quarterback if he was second string.
Right.
And there's like with the exception of maybe Andy Dalton last year, um but there's not too many second string quarterbacks that are Jameis Winston be another one of those guys that are in a top 32 quarterback thing as a second stringer.
Right.
So it's just I don't think it's warranted to shit on him for that much. But Chris Sims, hey, you got your own style. Part of me really does love it,
100%.
but
100%.
also I do think it's a little unwarranted.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the part of me that's wearing this jacket today, obviously, uh, you know,
For,
I think,
yeah, we're here for
I
it.
think, yeah, I'm absolutely here for it. And, you love to see a 16-minute rant about the Bears making a terrible decision in this guy's eyes. However, I agree with you. Like, I think Justin Fields is a good quarterback. Justin Fields has the highest score on the mental aptitude test of all time. Like this dude is a good player. Now the thing is like you said, it's all about framing, right? In something like this, he hasn't
Yeah.
played. They do this all. You know where this happens a lot. This happens a lot in college basketball, where
Hmm.
you'll have like a recruit come in, and then all of a sudden they're like a preseason conference player of the year, and everyone's kind of like, what? Like, how? Like, we've never seen him play yet. Like, it shouldn't be. So,
Yeah.
this is my argument is I don't think in any form of ranking you should be. I think, like, all of those rankings that come out, like the top quarterback, the top whatever, they should just exclude rookies. It should be in parentheses excluding
For sure.
rookies. It makes no sense to say something like, how the hell do we know? By week 4, the Bears will probably be starting Justin Fields with their level of
Yep.
dysfunction, and he might be fucking
Yep.
good. And then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so then what are we like? It's just you can't judge it right away, and it's silly to
For
do
sure.
so. I agree with you. It's kind of
Yeah.
sloppy to put out
Yeah.
that take and
Like
be like, I know he's it's like how what are you how can you like how can
in
you defend that?
yeah. And the thing too is like like he didn't like it. It wasn't like he had some positives and some negatives about Justin Fields.
Right.
Like really breaking down and analyzing why he would be the 39th best quarterback in the NFL. Like
Right.
for me, it just seems like he was just like all negative, and like for 16 minutes, it was just a long time. That's
That
half of
is.
this show. It's more than half of
That
this show.
is.
52% of this show, if we just talked about Justin Fields and how terrible of a football player he was, or how he was like the 39th worst quarterback in the
It'd be
league,
great. It'd be
you know,
crazy.
it's like it yeah, it's just a wild thing. What I'd be more interested to hear is where Chris Sims had Trevor Lawrence ranked on
Yeah.
his, where is Trevor Lawrence ranked in terms of the best quarterbacks in the NFL? If you want to have an interesting take, that's more interesting. Like, because Trevor Lawrence, that's more of a speculative thing. Nah, not speculative, but like a more of an interesting topic to see where you would have him slotted in against today's NFL quarterbacks. Because everyone's very high on Trevor Lawrence, seemingly going to be like at the quarterback position.
Yep.
So you think it would be a more interesting take to analyze him in the terms of the ranking of quarterbacks in the NFL, who is going to start in Jacksonville,
Right.
and see where you would have him. Where do you think he would kind of fall in that rank of quarterbacks? I know it's
Yeah.
unfair to judge a
No,
rookie who
no.
hasn't
It's
played, but just based on his college career, the hype around him,
yep.
going to the Jags, Timmy Tebow, all that good stuff. Uh,
It's
where do you think a guy like Trevor Lawrence ends up?
I would say so. I would look at it first from the standpoint of out of all the rookies, where does he
Yep,
stand? And I would say he's the best quarterback of all the rookies.
yep,
So you've got
yep.
that right there. Then you've got to look at some of the guys that are starting in the league. Like if you take the bottom 8 teams in the league, right? Like the bottom of every division, right?
Yeah.
He is
Yep.
probably better than most of them at this point because you have like a situation like I think I covered it in the like for example like is he better than like Sam Darnold? Sam Darnold's I think obviously gonna or he's
Yeah.
obviously out in you know New York now because they got Zach
Yep.
Wilson, but like he's better than a guy like that. Is he better than I mean, quite frankly, he's
Tua.
probably better than Andy Dalton. He's probably better than Tua.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
I would say he's probably in the range of like top 20, maybe like right around 20, 22, maybe somewhere in that
Yeah.
ballpark. But you just don't know, it's tough. It's hard to do it, right? It's just hard to do it. Like,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Because he could come out and have a season that puts him in top five for the
right, and
season.
we've seen it. We've seen it
Like
go both ways, right? Like you've
yep,
seen,
for
do I
sure.
think like there's a lot of weird comparisons too, because you go, okay, after we see some film, after we see maybe 8, 10 games of Trevor Lawrence, like could he be better than Cam Newton? After the year that Cam
Yeah.
Newton put up
Yeah.
last year, at this point in their
Yeah.
respective careers, like that's an interesting one. Like there's a few guys where you go, Tyrod
For
Taylor,
sure.
right? Tyrod Taylor could very well be a starter this year
Yep.
in Houston, and it's like at
Yep.
this point in their career, I don't know. Like maybe
Yeah.
very
Like
well
what about
maybe.
like a guy like Teddy Bridgewater too?
Yep. And so that's where it starts to get interesting because yeah, I mean if Trevor Lawrence comes in and he picks up the NFL offense and he can read the defenses, like
Yeah.
yeah, he is going to be better than a lot of these people. Same thing with Justin Fields. Like Justin Fields is a tremendous talent. He very well might be, but we've just seen tons of these guys burn out over the years too and not pan out and
For
not
sure.
be
Yeah.
the guy that,
Have a good first two seasons and then just kind
you
of
know.
trickle out. Like a guy like Sam Darnold,
Yep.
essentially.
And then you also
Um,
have a lot of guys that we're not even thinking of right now. There's probably a guy that got drafted in the 6th or 7th round that's going to be a decent player. Like that's very
yeah,
possible.
for sure.
That type of stuff happens all the
Yeah.
time. Russell Wilson was a 3rd round pick. Like it's hard to
Yep.
make sense of it
Yep.
sometimes.
And you do have like some of those guys that are certain breeds that it just seems like it doesn't matter really where they're going to get picked. They've already went there in their
Right.
mind of like, no, I'm playing for this team. I've already envisioned it, and then they just fucking somehow they're able to speak it into existence
Yep.
essentially. What do you think about Joe Burrow? Do you think he'll be? higher than him this year? I mean, he's
I
back. We saw
I'm ex
our first look at him at
I'm excited
OTAs.
about Joe Burrow. Like if you that's what I always find fascinating, like especially in the NFL, is when you can kind of try to compare guys that are like one draft class away from each other. Because if you're an NFL team, like
Hmm.
you're likely scouting like all like them kind of in a block, right? Like that's an interesting
For
thing,
sure.
like if you're a team
Yeah,
like for example the Jets, right? Um, if you had the opportunity to get Joe Burrow last year, like you probably don't take it because you're like, look, we can kind of play the Darnold angle. We can actually get like someone
for sure.
else, like a tackler or weapon, and then we have Trevor Lawrence slated higher. We have Justin Fields slated higher, even though they're juniors or whatever,
Yeah,
even though they're still playing. Like, so I think that's an interesting comparison. But I like Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow. I think the fact that they got Jamar Chase down there, which is receiver, one of his
for
college
sure.
receivers, and I think they took some like linemen as well, and you
Good.
know,
He needed
the
it.
tough part is that division. Like I think the division is tough, but I think Joe Burrow is a great quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is different.
I agree.
Trevor Lawrence has kind of
For sure.
been um like this highly touted Andrew Luck type of guy, like where the whole time he's been coming through,
Yeah, for
everyone's just
sure.
waiting. But I think Joe Burrow's damn good. If I'm
Yeah.
being
It's
honest,
been like that for the last 3 years at
for
least.
sure. If I'm being honest, I think Urban Meyer uh, is probably going to be quicker to figure out that division. So I could see I could see the Jaguars having a
Yeah, for
better
sure.
record than the Bengals this year potentially. But I like Joe Burrow a lot. I said it the other day on the or whenever we were talking about Joe Burrow, like I really am looking forward to with him like those
Yeah,
6 games this year against those division opponents. Like that stuff is so important. Like you can remember back
yeah,
to games with other quarterbacks where they had like these crazy games that sort of vaulted them to this like status. Like
yep,
everyone can remember early in their careers, they have a game where it just like everyone remembers like, oh yeah, like that took them up over the edge, right? Like I
yeah.
think Joe Burrow has 6 opportunities this year because of how good the other teams in that division are. And honestly,
To
like
really show himself.
I don't even know that he has to win a bunch of those 6. I think like if he can win one or two of them, but he can play well in
Yeah,
like a couple of them, like that is what it's going to come down to.
for
I
sure.
think he even had that last year before he got hurt in a game. I think they
Yeah,
played like the Browns or someone like that in a game, and
yep,
he was doing his thing. And so for him, I'm very excited to be honest with you. He
yeah,
looked good in OTAs and stuff, and
yeah.
he's one that I'm excited about.
I think with a guy like him, that if you can get him a half a second to a second more, when he drops back to pass, that's
Uh,
going to make a world of difference for him. Because he was a
yeah, no
guy
doubt.
that you just watch and it was like Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl when Patrick Mahomes is literally just running around because
Yep.
that defense was so ferocious. But that was like the Bengals every single game with Joe Burrow, and it's like it was tough to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
And
And then unfortunately,
so
he gets hurt running for his life, and
yeah, so hopefully he gets the yeah, for sure, and hopefully he protection this year. They build around that because that was a glaring spot that they needed help with this offseason. I think they addressed that, which will be good. So I'm excited to see what Joe Burrows has to do this season to get it done.
yeah,
But
no
I
doubt.
expect big things from him. He's
Yeah,
definitely going to be a quarterback that I think is like within the next 2 years here, probably really put himself on the map, which
yeah,
is
no
a
doubt, no doubt. I think I lost Scott here. Let me try to bring him back in real quick. If you're watching the stream here, just gonna bring old Scott back real quick. Let's see here. See if I can get him clicked back over. Hmm. Let's see, guys. Hang with me for a second. Just gonna try to bring old Scott back. Talk some NFL football here. Let's see. Oh, might have to close the stream down here for a second, guys, just to bring him back. Actually, you know what? I got an idea. Look at that. We're just, every now and then, you can have some technical difficulties, but such is life, right? No big deal. Just gonna go ahead and bring old Scott back in the mix here. Just got to get one thing set. But anyway, yeah, I think for those of you guys who are still rocking with us here on the stream, yeah, I mean Joe Burrow's definitely a guy that I'm excited about. Honestly, if I'm being totally honest with myself, Joe Burrow is probably the one of the five quarterbacks I'm the most interested in watching this year. If I'm being totally honest, Joe Burrow is probably. There we go. Let's see if we can bring Scott back here. I think I got him here.
Bring me
We're gonna
back.
go ahead and try to bring him back here. See if I can get his source set. And what an interesting
Dilemma that we have going on.
situation. I think they might be able to hear. There we go. He's back.
Hey,
All
there
right.
we
So anyway,
go.
moving on from Joe Burrow. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
back.
let's you know what I love to see
Yes.
after,
What do you?
Aaron Rodgers opens up about, the strained relationship that's going on in Green Bay, and, you know, the hypotheticals that come out of there and where
Yes.
they come from. I don't know if you saw this in a Madden simulation.
Of course.
And then the Packers went on to win the Super Bowl.
Of course.
So, I mean, because like
For sure.
it's a Madden simulation, like
For sure.
I get it. I get why you would do it, guy with Aaron Rodgers. But I think that also goes to show the talent level that actually is in Green Bay that doesn't really get talked about really the last ever since the NFL draft, because all the focus is on Rodgers.
For sure.
Like I saw they released the top 10 defensive ends for this year, or pass rushers, and Zadarius Smith was just left right off of it. And
That's
top 10.
crazy.
So that was wild to me, and then it just gets me thinking, like, this Rodgers story has gotten to be such a big thing that, like, pretty much any other Packers players
Yep.
non-existent, except for
Yep.
that wide receiving core that hypothetically all had a coordinated effort to not go to OTAs, which is another thing that is a little absurd. But hey, maybe they're sticking with solidarity with their guy,
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers. Maybe we have a little union strike going on right now.
Very
I don't
well
think that's
could.
the case. I don't think that's the case, but it's good to see that those guys also aren't at OTAs. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, essentially, people forget that the Packers have a very talented team, top to bottom,
For sure.
and
For sure.
it's just what a goofy little thing that CBS Sports did with that Madden simulation.
Goofy
It's
as
just
hell. It's
that's just trying to throw like gas on the fire,
yes.
essentially.
For sure.
That's what we don't like about these mainstream streaming companies out there.
Yep.
The Foxes, the CBS, the ESPNs, because you know what? They're all about just causing chaos just so they can sell views.
It's the truth.
We don't like that necessarily. We want to come real authentic, and you know what? We think those takes are just as great as those takes
Yep.
that those other places do. But hey, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he did open up about the strained relationship that is going on in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Nick, give me your 2 cents about that.
It's it's tough, right? Like we talked about it yesterday with the he does the Kenny Mayne interview, and I think
Yeah.
I'm at the point today where, it changes every day, but I think I feel optimistic because I do think that there are a lot of things working behind the scenes. There's a lot of moving parts here, and this still feels to me
Yeah.
like a situation where if you are going into this final stretch of your career, right? And as we talked about yesterday, you want to
Yep.
be certain that your philosophy and the front office, and maybe it's not just the front office, but you want to make sure
Yeah.
that everything is fitting together nice and seamlessly, right? My thing is, this would be the point to sort of use all your leverage, right? This is the time to use everything you got. to get what you want, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're Aaron Rodgers and you ended up getting traded anyway, like all the leverage that you have in Green Bay doesn't matter. So my thing is,
Yep.
if you're the type of person that understands like, hey, look, let me just kind of try to gain as much leverage as I can in situations, and then hopefully never have to use it. But if I do, at least I'll have
Yeah.
a lot. I think that what you're
Yes.
seeing right now is him kind of firing all the cannons and just being like, and his representation, because that's a part of this story that I
Yeah.
don't like that doesn't get covered enough. Like he has an agent that's a big time agent.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot going on here. And so I think
For sure.
they are trying to use their leverage as much as possible to get him as much of the stuff that he wants so he can be as comfortable as possible for this final stretch
Yeah.
of his career. The Packers are the only team that can offer him a 5 year deal. And I think that he is trying to make sure before he signs that 5 year deal that everything else is in place. And that's why I think you're seeing this
Yes.
sort of slow burn. I think he knows he's a very smart guy. I think he knows, okay, I've got
Yeah.
Aaron Jones is taken care of. Bakhtiari is taken care of. We've got the defense is in a good position. I like LaFleur a lot. Like we brought in my guy Blake Bortles. I like that. He's backing me
Yep.
up. Now I like if you're Aaron Rodgers, like you're setting yourself up right for whatever you want. I
Yep.
think he's looking to get Devonte Adams locked in long term. And then honestly, it's just like, look, man, like we're kind of good to go at that point, and I think he's just
Yep.
trying to use his leverage in every
For sure.
imaginable way to make this thing
Yep.
like the best possible outcome that we can
Yeah.
imagine. And I hope that my only hope is that he doesn't burn bridges with enough of the fan base. Like I don't trust all the other Packers fans.
Yeah.
I can't
No,
like
because they're fucking idiots from time to
we
time.
can't exactly, and there's a certain percentage of them that is going to be very disgruntled, and they're getting more upset
Yes.
every day that we go with this.
Yeah. You see it if you're in Packers
Yes,
Twitter,
and,
for
and
sure.
so I do. My hope is that we're getting close to landing this plane, right?
For
But
sure.
in my opinion, if I use the plane analogy, like I don't think this is an emergency landing. I don't think this thing is on the way down. Like I just think he is.
We're not Denzel Washington inverting the
No,
plane to
no.
land
I
this
think
bad
I
boy.
think things are
It's
fine.
not that
I
complicated.
think things are more
Yes.
than fine. I think that's what it is. I think he's unloading all the leverage. Like, think about it if you're listening to this in your own circumstance, at your own job. Like, you probably have certain, like, amounts
Yep.
of leverage in your own job. And this would be the equivalent of you being like, all right, here's my sort of list of demands. Here's what I know
Yep.
I bring to the table. I kind of know like, you guys are in trouble if I leave, right? Like if you're like the top salesman or
Yeah.
something, and you're like, I don't want to be this
Y-
guy, but if I'm disgruntled enough, like I want to stay here, but I'm gonna use my leverage then. And this
Yes.
is a position people find themselves in. Like I've found myself in it before. I'm sure you have too. Like I think that's all
Yep.
that's really going on here. I think that's
Yeah.
where
And
I'm at right now, at least.
yeah. And the other thing about it too, which the mainstream media doesn't cover, but Pat McAfee, he touched on it on his show,
Uh,
was that Aaron Rodgers, if if you're really looking at this, he's doing it for himself. Obviously, he wants to, like you said, have that security, make sure things are seamless. Like, because I do think he wants to be in Green
yep,
Bay. He's the owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, all that stuff, the ties to Wisconsin that he loves. So I do think he wants to be in Green Bay. He just needs that certainty. But Pat was actually one talking about, and you don't see the mainstream media talking about this,
uh,
but Pat was talking about how Rodgers is not probably only doing this for himself, but for other people in the
yep,
league.
yep,
Because you see it so many times that, well, it's a business, and he's just like, oh, well, I just got to uproot my family because I got traded
right,
because it's a business,
right,
that I wasn't even expecting type of thing.
right,
So when you see a guy like Aaron Rodgers who he has been in support of the players before, maybe not the forefront, but I do see like this as his own kind of way of saying like, hey, once you get to a certain point in your career and you've been contributing and you're at the top of your game and the top of your position, you know, you can start to, you know, have get to a place where you have more security with
yep,
the franchise. You have a little more communication maybe.
right,
And it's not so much that you have input into decision making, but you have a little more communication, at least the luxury of knowing if something was going to happen to you before the media got a hold of it and then you're hearing it from a third party source.
yeah,
So I don't think like all like people look at Aaron Rodgers and they're like, oh, this guy, Eagle Maniac. And it's like, I don't know what type of Aaron Rodgers or you've seen the past
Right.
year, but it just doesn't seem like that. And to me, I think like he's taken it to one to really lock himself in, but two to make a statement for other organizations around the league that like, hey, you guys have for quite a while now have forgotten about what makes these things tick.
Yep.
And it is the fans, it is the culture, it is the front office, it is those things, but it is the people essentially.
Yes.
And I think that's what he was really trying to get to is like, hey, without the players, the people that make this thing work, you guys don't you really don't have nothing, you know.
Right.
So really just a kind of just an interesting situation happening in Green Bay. And I
It's
was actually at the dispensary yesterday in a
uh
Green Bay Packers shirt,
uh
and it's legal here, so that's no big deal. And of course, wearing my Green Bay Packers shirt, a guy asked
yep.
me, he's like, I gotta ask. I'm like, what's happening with Rodgers? I'm like, well, to be honest, I think he's either gonna play for Green Bay, or he asked me where he was going. I'm like,
Okay.
well, he's either gonna be going to Green Bay or he's gonna retire. He's
Yeah.
like, really? I'm like, yeah, I don't really see too much in between. Like the Packers are
Yep.
adamant about not trading him, so that's not going to happen at least
Right.
this year, you
Right.
know. And so, and he was kind of shocked by that. And of course, he was a Bears fan, and we had a great conversation about it. But yeah, he was shocked like that. I thought the Packers wouldn't trade him, and I'm like, I think you might have been listening to too much of the mainstream media, who has
For sure.
blown this situation. I don't want to say out of proportion because it has gotten to a certain level, but they have exaggerated or brought in other information about this
Yep.
story that we have found out not to be true or not to be the real reasons of why he's upset and things like that. So that's a tricky thing when you're watching that mainstream media about like, well, what really is happening in Green Bay? And if you're not
Yes.
a Green Bay Packers fan, that gets a little more confusing as well
Yeah.
because you're not in there with the Aaron Naglers, the Rob Domowskis, those types of guys who are
Right.
covering
Right.
this stuff daily,
Is
um,
so the, here, but
who
here,
provide really great insight too.
here's an interesting thing about the team, right? Like you mentioned the Packers, and it makes me think back to what the CBS story that you were talking about. It's like the
Yep.
thing as a Packers fan that makes me actually kind of proud of the team is that, to be quite honest, part of the reason that I think it's so likely that Aaron's going to come back is because the team has created a bunch of leverage for their self where, to be
Yeah.
honest, when they're sitting in a meeting with him and his representation, they're able to look across the table and go, look, man, not only do we love you and want you here, but we've put a team around you that's phenomenal. And to
Yep.
be quite honest with you, like if you would like to be traded, we understand that you might have some frustrations, but where the fuck are
Yep.
you going to go that's going to be any better than here? Like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
that's the leverage that the team has created, which is kind of awesome. Like they have
Yep.
actually built such a solid group around him that it's
Yep.
like they've created a situation where I'll be honest, if they stink without like if they were bad, like they didn't have a Devonte Adams or they didn't have
Yeah.
the caliber of defense that they have,
For
he
sure.
might very well be like, look, there's a better opportunity for me to win somewhere else. But the
Yep.
the thing is like there isn't anywhere
Yeah.
else that has a
Like
better opportunity for him. Like the Green Bay
yeah.
Packers, as we've covered many times,
For
maybe a
sure.
top three team on paper in the entire
Yep.
NFL. And so where's he going to go? Like they have built
Yeah.
that. And so,
Yep.
you know,
and and maybe if this was the Packers of 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, where they didn't have some of these talents or these guys weren't as developed,
yep,
then that's a completely different story. And you would say Rodgers has a lot of the leverage. And like if you're looking at the Packers, you're like, well, they didn't take a wide receiver, they didn't take a wide receiver, they didn't take a wide receiver. They are okay at the wide receiver
yes,
position and the tight end position.
yes,
Like that is something that after the Jordan Love pick became hyped, like, oh, well, they didn't do this, they didn't do this. And it's like, guys, I understand that, but they did go get Devin Funches, who sat out last year because of COVID and things like that. Hey, no problems there. That dude's rested, ready to go this year.
right.
They have a team that is pretty star studded, but it's just in a small market, so you may not know about as many of the stars as you should.
Right,
Like a
right,
guy like Zadarius Smith or Jair Alexander, or those types of players that are.
right. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, no doubt.
So yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see how the Packers do have that leverage with Aaron Rodgers because yeah, like where are you gonna go And that's what I think eliminates the trade talk,
Yep.
because it's like, where are you going to go that you can be as successful? Like, yeah, I know you make any team into a contender wherever you go because you are Aaron Rodgers, but there are different levels of contenders
For sure.
because you could be a wild card contender, you could be an
For
NFC
sure.
Championship contender, and then you can be a Super Bowl contender. And
Right.
depending on how your team's set up, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is getting every single team to that Super Bowl just by himself.
Right. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
he's definitely getting any team to the playoffs.
Yeah,
There's
no
no
doubt.
doubt about that.
No doubt.
So, yeah, we'll see how many more days those lights stay green, Nick. But I'm
I know.
hoping by the end of the week. That's not insider information, so you don't have to worry about that. Also, we're not financial advisors, so take
Nope.
that into account when we're up here speaking. And it's just for educational purposes, the stuff that we're talking to you about.
Of
So
course.
you learn, so you understand, you're ready for the season, fantasy, football, all that good stuff. You have a great analysis, breakdown of everything. But it looks like maybe this summer you're going to have a really in-depth view of Aaron Rodgers and the things he brings to the table, and an in-depth view of the Green Bay Packers and the things those bring, or the things they bring to the table.
No doubt.
So it'll be interesting. Nothing like a little marriage counseling to get the things done, but hey, it's needed from time to time.
For sure.
But I did see that Gutekunst came out and he said he probably could have handled some situations better. Which, to see that level of ownership and maybe some things that you didn't handle well, I think only helps this type of situation. So, hey, I'm optimistic. I'm always going to be optimistic.
Yep.
I'll be optimistic till the day Roger says he retires, and then I'll still be optimistic.
Me too.
And
Me too.
that's just how I do it over here. That's how Nick is. Hey, that's what we do at Fancast, baby. You're never out of it till you're out of it.
That's the
But you're
truth.
really never out of it.
That's the truth.
So, hey, that's all we got for you today. We'll catch you next time, jabronis.
See you guys